High school teachers, what successful student of yours ended up much worse than you expected, and vice versa? Story 1. I went to high school with this guy who got a girl pregnant at 15. Not sure on all his details, but basically he stopped coming to school shortly after. To sort of complicate matters, his daughter's mother was pretty addicted to opioids, and after a few years, he ended up getting full custody after she failed a bunch of drug tests. He was never particularly smart or anything. I would have never expected him to go anywhere in life. In our senior year, I ran into him outside of school, and he told me that he had to drop out and work full-time to support his daughter. He started working in construction and started learning trades. Because he hit the trades at a super early age, he basically got a huge head start. He's probably around 28 right now, owns his own company, and also his house, like no mortgage, free and clear, and is currently building a family cottage on a nice piece of land by the lake. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Never use a condom. Oh no! I am so happy things worked out well for the guy. And this is also a really great lesson about the value of trade jobs and whatnot, but also use a condom, folks. Something, causation, correlation, I don't know. Story 2. I thought I had a student that was a low performer turned success last year. I had a student for 2 years, junior and senior, and we did not get off on the right foot. He was making suggestive remarks, and I'm a young teacher. I went to my administration to have them talk with him, and he was convinced I didn't like him because of his race. I pushed for him to actually do work and didn't put up with his BS. I spell out my expectations for each assignment before it's begun, and I expect my students to attempt the assignment and slowly become better at their skills as the semester progresses. The student retaliated by not doing work, like literally not doing the essays, 50% of the grade, on his tests, and just flat out not doing classwork/homework. I did everything I could to rectify the situation. We spoke together with a counselor, brought in family members, had multiple one-on-one conversations, created behavior plans, the works. He ended up failing me junior year and was on course to fail me his senior year. A month before graduation and day he got his cap and gown, he pulled the counselor and me aside and said he wanted to graduate and he'd do what he could to pass my class. He busted his butt that last month and ended up with a 69.1. I had seen such an amazing turnaround in him. I had no issues bumping his grade to a 69.5, which rounded up to a 70. I gave him a hug at graduation and told him I expected great things from him. By this point, he and I were good. There was a mutual respect. I learned 6 months later he had a job at a local stitching company and was doing well. I was so incredibly proud and happy for him. He's now awaiting trial for murder in a drug deal gone wrong. Story 3. Not a student, but a classmate in high school that all the teachers at our reunions are always in awe about. Jenna moved to our upper middle-class town from the city in middle school. Nice enough girl, but didn't fit in and started hanging with the loser crowd. She got pregnant in 11th grade and her mom sent her off to one of those Bible summer camps, and it was well known throughout the school that she gave the baby up for adoption. To say senior year was rough for her socially was an understatement. When I would come home on break from school, I saw her around working cashier jobs and going to the local state school part-time. Her mom moved away, so she was on her own the day she turned 18. She came to the 10-year, and it turns out she joined the Air Force, so we exchanged emails. I'm in the Air Force too, and ping each other about once a year. 20-year rolls around, and our former principal, a retired Marine, just can't stop talking about how he really had faith she would turn her circumstance around, which is code for thought she'd never make it in life. She's now an officer and working at the Pentagon on the senior staff of some important generals. She made below-the-zone promotions her whole career and is getting ready to promote to colonel next year, which is one step below one-star general. You could see our former principal just completely engaged talking to her when previously probably only talked to her when she was suspending her from school. I know everyone expected her to turn out like a bad episode of Teen Mom, but she really turned that one around for sure. Honestly, that's an impressive story. She was dealt multiple rough hands in life and still managed to do well in life. I think giving up the kid for adoption was probably pretty helpful and not a bad option for those who don't want to pursue abortion. I know it can be hard to think about giving up a child, but I'm willing to bet both her child and her had a better life because of that decision. Still, I'm sure it was hard for her. Story 4. I do work in education. I work with special ed students. I had a student with autism I worked with. He was midway on the spectrum, not high functioning, but not high needs either. Anyway, when he was in high school, I was the only one who could get him to do work. He was often moody. I am of the belief that if you build a relationship with students, especially those with behavior and emotional needs, they will decide that they will work for you. Well, this kid would do his work if I was there helping him. He went to a program at the local community college aimed at special needs kids. This kid blossomed there. He took media classes, started writing ideas for shows and movies, literally became the rock star of the program. I ran into him at the school I work at graduation a few years ago. At this time, he had been out of my program for 2 years. He ran up to me and gave me a giant hug. He looked at me with a giant smile on his face, excitedly telling me about school and a trip he was taking with his media program to New York over the summer and how he had a girlfriend now. This was a kid who would talk with his head down and mumble most of the time. I nearly cried when he was telling me this. He was still considered part of the school district students until he aged out last year. I was told that at his exit meeting, he said one of the jobs he wanted was to come and work in the classroom as an assistant to Ms. Bijout. That's my boy. I love hearing these stories. I've worked with people on the spectrum and have people on the spectrum in my family. Sure, their mental and social needs are different from mine, but they're no less ambitious or accomplished. In fact, plenty of them are way more accomplished. They just need the right environment and understanding, like anyone else. Story 5. Not a teacher or a student, but I spoke to a high school teacher recently who told me how she had this one golden class about 10 years ago, and in this class there was one special girl. Kind to everyone, popular without being trained horses in her spare time, supportive and loving parents, and a straight A student who wanted to become a vet. I see a lot of girls who want to be vets, but this one had what it takes. The teacher said that if someone put a gun to her head and asked her to rank all the students she ever had in a 30-year career, this girl would be at the head of the line. That girl is now serving life in prison for killing her ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend, chopping her up with a hacksaw, and burying the parts in the woods. Story 6. One student was very dedicated, valedictorian, etc., and wanted to be a doctor. He started at the university in our town, not a bad science program, and cheaper, but his mother kept a very tight rein on him. Between that and the pressures of school, he ended up attempting to take his own life and had to drop out for a while. I was so sad for him. On the flip side, there are lots of kids who don't do great in high school but go on to be very successful. They maybe just don't do well in traditional school environments, haven't hit their academic stride or subject interest yet, or have issues at home. It's rare that I have a student not do well in class and I think, she/he will struggle in life. Story 7. A student. When I started high school, I was depressed and didn't care, doing rather awful in most of my classes. I had a geography teacher who always took the time to ask me about my day, and if I was missing school, she'd ask if I was all right whenever I started going to her class again. She ended up retiring at the end of that semester, and I didn't see her until a few days ago. When I saw her, I was running down the street with a black pouch for a bank run, a lanyard of a well-known financial institution around my neck where I now work full-time, and a smile on my face. It felt good knowing she was witnessing just how much things have changed for me, and I hope she knows she played a huge part in it. P.S. I'm now also in a relationship with a guy she always sat beside me with 5 years ago. Hell yeah, good on ya. This is so wonderful to hear, and I'm sure she was more than happy to see you thriving. Honestly, even a simple connection like that with a teacher can make such a huge difference. Hell, I know the connections I made with a few of my teachers, Mr. K and Mr. B, were really influential in me pursuing my passions in entertainment and writing. That kind of stuff is so important for some students, so I always love hearing about it. Story 8. This girl was a classmate of mine. She was a super nice girl, top of the class in everything, played multiple sports, and just seemed to have it all together. She received tens of thousands in scholarship money to go to pharmacy school. She lasted about half a semester freshman year, ended up partying way too much, and couldn't keep up with the workload. She got super drunk the night before a meeting with the dean and went in hungover to the meeting that held her fate. She soon became pregnant and has multiple kids. She wasted an insane amount of people's money, and most disappointing was her wasted talent. Last I knew, she was a cashier at a hardware store. Story 9. Well, to the teachers out there, here's my advice to you as a very successful kid in high school and still at college. Worry about them. I think schools give too much focus on the students that apparently are going to be failures in life and believe the students with the best grade have their lives solved and are far more mature than the rest of them. Please talk to them, encourage them, and worry less about study and live their young years to the fullest. Worry if they have overprotective parents or fear about their reaction if they're not successful top students. I'm not that bad as many of those mentioned here, but I guess I would have chosen a better career, would understand better social life, and would have surpassed my anxiety years ago. In my honest opinion, I deeply regret being such a top-grade student and not enjoying my childhood nor my teenage years. Honestly, that is some pretty solid advice. All students need that encouragement, that connection, be they star students or struggling. School isn't just about inputting information. It's about making connections, learning interaction, and building relationships and passions. Story 10. I'm not a teacher, but I was a lower-than-average performer at a college prep private school. There were around 30 kids to each class, and getting into Ivy Leagues was the ultimate goal for all of us. I was one of the handful of kids that couldn't achieve that, so just went to a normal university of state school. Everyone else went to Harvard, UCLA, Brown, Yale, Berkeley, you name it. Of all of my classmates, I'm the only one pulling in $250,000 a year and in a high-level position at a large company. I don't mean for this to come off sounding like a brag or anything, but I'm proud of what I've become, and I know that my teachers would never have bet on me to be the one to have been so successful. Story 11. I'm not the teacher, but instead the student who was certainly expected to fail. In junior high school, I came home crying from my gym teacher calling me a lazy fat kid because I didn't join the group activity and was off to the side sitting on the bench. In high school, my science teacher told me my grades were so bad that I wouldn't be able to be successful in university if I even got accepted. Fast forward to 4 years out of high school, I'm in my third year of university and have maintained a 3.6 GPA while working full-time as a retail manager. I'm also prepping for my first solo double-century 200-mile bike ride, and I am doing 200 to 300 miles per week. Sometimes you need people to tell you the real crap, the crap that will get you off your butt and prove to yourself you're not anything like they described, and of course, prove them wrong in the process. For some people, I think this works, but I really don't know that it's a one-size-fits-all solution. Yeah, there are some people who will hear this stuff and will work to prove people wrong, but there are other people, perhaps with tough home lives, mental illnesses, or who knows what, where words like that are just going to tear them down. Story 12. My best friend in high school, third in the class, athlete, loved by everyone, got to college and just drank and played pinball. Ended up delivering supplies at a local hospital for 20 years and living with his brother. Finally decided to change, learned to be a court reporter, successful for a few years, got cancer, and died in months. Story 13. One of my former students is now one of the most powerful drug dealers in my area and insists on hugging me and talking for a while if he sees me anywhere. I mean, depending on your point of view, he's both a success story and a failure. Story 14. I was away on the final class of my French course in high school. Everyone got assigned a title like friendliest or smartest. Everyone voted on me being worst dressed, since all I wore were hand-me-downs or dirty clothes from me climbing trees or fixing stuff with my dad. Fast forward a few years, and I'm a fashion model and got on the cover of a magazine. Only lasted a short while, but it possibly made me the most smug girl on the planet. Story 15. I can think of two examples. One kid on my high school football team was an insanely talented running back. He got a full ride to BYU for football and could have very well made it to the NFL, but a year or two into college, knocked up a chick, and had to abandon that dream. Another guy, also a football player from my high school, was an excellent quarterback and got a full ride to Colorado Boulder. He got kicked off the team for smoking weed. Not sure what either are up to these days. Story 16. Obligatory not a teacher, but a friend of mine knocked up his girlfriend in grade 10 and dropped out to work in the mines. Fast forward about 20 years and I find out he's my mom's neighbor and is in the same line of work as I am, but one rung higher. Son of a bee. I mean, still not an ideal scenario, but I'm glad it worked out well for him. College isn't the only path to success in life, though obviously for many careers it is. Don't all of you go having kids as teenagers to find out the hard way, though. Maybe just take time to really think what you want to do and what path you should take. Story 17. Mom teaches high school and she thought our homecoming king/star quarterback could parlay his charm into a successful sales gig working for one of the jock sniffers in town. Nope. Ends up his was one of the rare cases where faking it until you make it failed, and 20 years later he found himself replaced by a machine at Jack in the Box. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.